You know, everything can look to something as a source for its existence. For example, hydrogen and helium gases come together as the source of the sun's fuel. This fuel in turn produces the light that serves as the source of energy for the occurrence of photosynthesis. And photosynthesis is considered the source of all living plants and animals, the very process which makes their lives possible. In essence, everything we see, and even those things we don't, owe their very existence to something. In other words, everything has to have a source. Now, to reach a deeper spiritual life requires that you choose a source. In other words, to begin a spiritual journey requires that you look to something as the source to propel your life forward. Now, many sources present themselves, some in the form of following an idea or a teaching, others in following a person or a particular creed. To review all of the resources and content created that promises to fuel your life forward would just take too long, and in the end would just create too much confusion. So let me try to simplify the process by taking all the proposed sources for a meaningful spiritual life and place them into two categories. Now, this first category I like to call the changers. Changers recognize every flaw that pesters their lives and work very, very hard to make over those flaws into something better. They see what's broken and go about trying to fix it. And what's the source that these changers rely on? Well, it's their own strength and abilities. Now, the success of this particular strategy then depends on the individual's talent, willpower, determination, passion, commitment, whatever you want to call it. I like to say good old-fashioned work ethic. All those qualities that serve us well in the world we live in. But characteristics such as these just don't help us very much in our spiritual life. Most of the time, a person's quest for spirituality comes from a desire for a better life. A life that overcomes difficulty, a life that overcomes adversity, and most importantly, a life that overcomes personal flaws. We assume activities that contribute to our personal and professional lives or contribute to our personal and professional success somehow produce the same results for our spiritual lives. But they don't. At best, these efforts just allow us to do a great job recognizing our flaws and then trying to reorganize our lives to fix these flaws. But in the end, it just fails in generating enough power to remove them from our lives. You can find changers in every religion. New Age, Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons, Hindus, Judaism, Muslims, Buddhists, secular humanists, and all those others that I failed to mention. And yes, you can even find changers in Christianity. Now, each of the faiths I just mentioned promotes a unique core teaching that the changers who follow them have to adhere to. Although very different in their core doctrines, all of the religions require the same thing, that the person look to his or her own self-effort to change. But a second category of people exists. People who search for a source of a deeper spiritual life outside of their own strength and abilities. Now, instead of changers, these people I call the exchangers. But like the changers, the exchangers are aware of every personal flaw they have. But what makes them different is that the exchangers have given up trying to change themselves. You know, fed up with attempting to change something they have no power to change, the exchangers live each moment in total dependence on a life greater than their own. This type of a person exchanges his or her own life for one that is greater, a greater life that has met the challenges that we all face head on and won. The life I'm speaking of is the life of Christ. Now, just because you profess to be a Christian or claim any other label that claims the name of Christ doesn't mean that you've experienced the exchanged life. Certainly the very act of becoming a Christian requires an exchanged life. You know, your life for His, and though such a decision takes care of eternal matters, for you to experience victory and satisfaction over the daily onslaught of life requires that His life, and not yours, meets each challenge. Whereas the changers try to overcome adversity with more self-effort and spiritual determination, those living an exchanged life get out of the way and allow the life of Christ to flow through them to meet those challenges head on. Now, it seems counterintuitive that to experience the deeper spiritual life, you would kind of have to get out of the way and allow some other life, the life of Christ, to confront your daily situations. But that is exactly the case. You see, when you look to your own effort as the source for your spiritual life, even when that effort focuses on displaying good and moral character, at best you just come off as an imitator of the original. Why? Because such behavior doesn't come naturally. The source of a deeper, more meaningful spiritual life doesn't flow from your own self-effort. Instead, it flows from the person of Jesus. Yet as easy as it may seem to allow His life to flow from within you to confront head-on every challenge you might face, most of the time doing so meets stern internal resistance. That's because we prefer to imitate Jesus than to give Him moment-by-moment control of our lives. We hesitate when allowing Him to be the source of our lives because doing so strips us away of our control. But exactly how well does life run when you and I try to control it? The world and what it throws at us is just too big for you and me to handle. What we need is a life bigger than the world, a life much bigger than the problems and obstacles that we face. You see, you and I do a very, very poor job of being the source of our own spiritual growth. We can't expect the same self-effort that got us into our problems that propelled us to look for spiritual answers in the first place, to be the source that leads us out of them. Fortunately, we are perfectly made to receive a life greater than our own, and then allow this life to flow through us. Instead of the source, we become the agent Christ's life works through. At any given moment, we live a spiritual life as a changer or an exchanger. Now, I don't know about you, but my past ways of living in my own self-effort have proven to me that I need something greater than myself as the source. Fortunately, then, there is one who offers that alternative to myself, Christ, who gladly exchanges my life with His. And if you sense the need for His life in this moment, you simply need to recognize Christ as your source and allow Him to flow through you to meet the challenges of life head on.